Hiya, can you hear me? How are you doing today? Do you have any questions for me before I get into? Okay, good. You can hear me. That's great. Right. At the moment, you're the only person viewing, but I thought I'll do a live stream so that I can get this video out today. Do you have any questions for me? I've got a few questions that I'm going to answer from previous videos. But if you've got any questions, just fire away in the comments and I'll answer them. So, on the previous video that I've done, which is about learning 5 AWS courses and learning them for free. Okay, wait. So, how can I get a job in DevOps? So, what are you studying? Are you studying computer science? Are you studying what course are you studying? Or have you already graduated? Because to be honest, I don't know, like I feel like I don't know about the curriculum right now. I graduated in 2019 and I had never ever heard of DevOps at all, never heard of the word DevOps or tools and stuff like that. So you're doing a bachelor's in IT. Okay, that's good. I would say, like, personally, like right now, like in my job day to day, like I don't think like my degree like means all that. I think it helped in terms of, you know, if the HR people are needing something to tick on a box, like I feel like that helps you. It kind of, I think it helps you get your foot in the door, but I don't think day to day I'm really taking in anything that I learned in my degree. So I did computer science, and you may know that's all like coding, algorithms, maths, learning how to code and stuff like that. So on the day to day in my job, I do scripting, but I'm not developing apps, you know. I work with front end and back end developers. So company I work for is it's a health, it's a health and lifestyle company. And essentially I work on a product team where we like push out, like we are developing a website, but I'm not front end or back end, I'm DevOps. So I work very closely with front end and back end developers. So it it's hard. I'd say focus on your degree. However, if you're not doing any DevOps related like courses on your degree, like if you've got no modules that cover DevOps, I'd say focus on your degree, make sure you've got that done. But if you can, and if you have any spare time, just start learning a couple of DevOps tools here and there. I think if you're doing IT, like you say you're doing, I'd say before you even get into DevOps, I'd recommend you to start learning Python if you're not already doing that. If you're already learning Python, then I'd say the first I'd say the first thing before you even then get into DevOps would be to pick a cloud that you want to sort of focus on, and maybe get one of the fundamental certifications. So let's say you're fresher, or you've graduated, you've just graduated, you're fresher, or you're even in your first, second, or third year. Then what I'd say is, if you're not doing anything that's DevOps related, just start off by learning Python. Maybe pick up a bit of Linux as well, some bash Linux scripting. And then what I would say is then pick a cloud provider. So pick out of AWS, Google Cloud Platform, or Azure. Now, I'd say pick quite carefully, depending on your country, or what companies would you want to join in the future? What cloud provider do they use? That's the sort of thing you want to sort of bear in mind. So because I'm in the UK, a, a lot of the companies that were around me, or like within commuting distance, or like that I felt like I wanted to apply to, a lot of them did use Azure and AWS. Some even don't specify. So, for example, there'll be a job description, and it'll be like, we want you to be able to understand or use Terraform, or you have a good idea of what DevOps means, or you understand how to build pipelines and how to maintain pipelines, that kind of stuff. But they never really specified, oh, we use Azure, or oh, we use AWS, because honestly, it doesn't really matter if you go down AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud Platform, because a lot of the tools. So if you think of AWS like as like the top tier, and then just think of all of the different tools and services to build something. So I'd say a really quick, like easy demonstration. Hiya. Um, I'll get back to you in a second, Cubis. So I'd say a really quick overview of using AWS is, or even Azure or Google Cloud Platform, is you've got AWS at the top, and let's say you wanted to, I don't know, let's just take some infrastructure from, I don't know, let's say you are working for a company. Let's say you're working for Subway. Let's just say you're working for Subway, for example. Now, if you think about Subway, you've got the people that are in the shop serving customers, making the sandwiches and stuff. But if you think about the website, how is that website infrastructure built, and how is it maintained? So with websites, you've got to have databases, you've got to have servers so that the databases can connect to. You've got to have those things in the cloud. You would have those infrastructure under AWS. So you would have AWS at the top, and you would have like a database that connects to AWS, and that would connect to Subway. So you have all these tools that make up the infrastructure to serve that service or that application, or whatever it is. So I'll answer some questions now. I'm not sure. Is it Vabav? I don't know if I pronounced your name right. I don't know if that like sort of answers your question. If you feel like I need to like maybe clarify it a bit more, just let me know. So Cubis says, hello, I received your message about how you created a new Python program for your team. I know that is exciting and it truly was inspiring for me, and I appreciate you sharing experience. Thank you. So, yeah, literally that task of actually recorded a video of that app that I created. It's not necessarily something that my manager was like, okay, Tish, you need to go and create this for us. Essentially, I was doing a ticket, and the ticket was, if you're not familiar with any of the cloud topologies, I use Azure at work, and in Azure you have a service called Key Vault, and a key vault is literally like a safe. So if you think of a physical safe, that's what a key vault is. Within the key vault, you have keys and you have secrets. And essentially, let's for example say you have this password for a database. You don't want it on someone's computer in their OneDrive or on their local drive. So you'll copy and paste that secret or that key into the key vault so that it's safe, it's secure, no one can get into it unless they're part of your organization, so your company's organization. So the way how a lot of Azure stuff works is you have commands. So the it's called the Azure CLI, and the same will apply for GCP and AWS. Essentially, you launch terminal. If you're on Mac or if you're on Windows, you will launch command prompt, and you'll put in the command, for example, AZ key vault create, and then that means you want to create a key vault, or you do AZ secret create, like you want to create a secret, and then you just do it one at a time. So the problem I was having was this particular task, I had to create over 24 secrets, and I didn't want to do it one by one. So I created an app that enabled me to I created an app using Python that would connect to your organization's cloud. In this case, it would be Azure. And then you would it will ask you questions. It will say, what's the name of the key vault that you want to create the secrets for? How many secrets do you want to create, etc., etc.? And then it's literally, you just type it in and you can create so many at one time. So I just use my initiative to make my task faster in the job, but I didn't have to do that. I could have just done it one by one. That wasn't required from me. But also I wanted to challenge myself because um I really enjoy learning and coding in Python, and it's, if not the leading programming language, scripting language that you want to be on point with for DevOps. I'd say Golang is up there as well. I've not learned Golang yet because I don't feel like I need to. Um, so yeah, Kibis, that's pretty much why I did that. It wasn't needed, but it was just something that I wanted to do because I wanted to code. I kind of was like, oh, I fancy coding. Let me do something. So now what I'm actually doing is anytime I come across a task like that where I'm having to type the Azure command one by one, I'm literally going to just add it into the Python script so I can make a full-fledged program, and people can just be like, but when they launch the program, they're like, they can select whether they want to create secrets or create a virtual machine or whatever it is. That's my end goal. I'll when that video comes out, it'll be linked to my GitHub. You can actually just search for my GitHub. It's just TechyTish, so you could see what I'm working on. So Ganta Ganesh asked, I am a beginner and how can I get a remote job offers, ma'am? Right. So, okay. So with remote jobs, I'd say, to be honest, you got to be careful. There's a lot of jobs out there where they're like, okay, oh, it's remote, or it's remote, and then you end up getting an interview, and then it turns out actually it's hybrid, so it might be like 2 days in the office and 3 days remote. If you want 100% remote, there is a website that I will, let me just post it in the comments. Let me just Google it. Remote jobs. What country are you from, Danta? I think this. There it is. It's called otter.com. This is a really good website. I'll just paste it there. That company, that organization basically lists loads of jobs that are pretty much, if not 100% remote. I've signed up to them previously. I didn't get my current job through them, but they have loads of jobs on there, and you can select if it's fully remote, hybrid, or whatever the case may be. So QB's asked, I found a YouTube video on Python automation. Do you think I should just learn that particular or basic Python, or both? I think it depends, because let me just have a look at YouTube to see what sort of automation Python videos there are. Python automation for look. So I don't know if I can share my screen actually. Don't think I can. If I do, I don't know how to. I've never done it before. So I've just typed into Google Python, not into Google, into YouTube, Python automation for beginners. Anything from Free Code Camp, 3 hours long. Yeah, that's the one from Code Camp, Free Code Camp. I'm just going to copy the link into the chat. Copy link address. Anything from Free Code Camp is just absolutely amazing. I'm just going to quickly launch this and just have a look at what sort of stuff they cover. So sending an email, and basics of regular expression. Yeah. See, what I was talking about, this is a really good video, Cubies. What I was talking about with that sort of program that I built for my company. Well, it wasn't for my company, it aided my job. The video that I've just linked at the topic 2 hours, 40 minutes and 3 seconds, converting the script into a CLI tool. That's sort of similar to what I've already been doing. And I've never come across this video. I've never personally gone into I've never done a tutorial or never followed a tutorial on Python automation, but I think it depends. If you've honestly never ever, if you've never ever done any sort of Python programming or any programming at all, I'd 100% recommend that you start off with all of the basics first. Now, in the description, I've got I don't know if you guys, so in the description, I've got a link to the Python mega course that literally, that's on Udemy. I've started it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a series of like basically a come code with me. So that Python mega course goes through all of the basics. Then you get to build 10 real world applications. Now, obviously, when you're doing DevOps, you're not building applications, you're just using programming languages or TypeScript type of languages to basically deploy infrastructure or automate things. You're not doing it to build applications. DevOps has got nothing to do with front end. If anything, it's more back endy type of work. So personally, I'm doing that course because it will challenge me. And what I'm going to do is once you'll see on the series that I'm doing, that I'm recording, you'll see that when I'm doing one app out of the 10, what I'm going to do is then try and deploy the application using DevOps. So let's say you built an app, but you're following this tutorial, you're just doing it. You're probably doing a lot of things manually. Whereas what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the app, follow the tutorial so that so other people can follow along if they want to. And then I'm going to challenge myself by implementing DevOps tools or practices or methods to automate the deployment of that application. So you can see that I'll just go through quickly what the types of programs that you would create. So let's just see. Okay, so the first app is web mapping. So you get to create an interactive mapping of population and volcanoes. So you basically get to create a Google Maps. That's basically what that is. You get to create a Google Maps. That's the first application. That already sounds quite challenging, to be honest. Then the second app is you get to do some web, you get to basically control the webcam. So if you've got a laptop that's got a webcam, or you've got a computer that's got an external webcam, you get to create an app that will control the webcam to detect certain objects. The third one is data analysis. To be honest, I have no idea. The fourth one is web development with Flask. So you get to build a personal website and you get to use the Flask framework. That's really good because I work on the web dev team, but I'm just doing DevOps. We get to I will have to like sometimes look at the source code files. So having that basic understanding of things like HTML5 is good. It's good to know. And that's just a few. I'll link this in the chat now, but I'd highly recommend if you did follow that Python mega course, because you'll be able to learn. You've even got Flask and PostgreSQL, so you get to learn how to use a database and then connect that to your website. And then on top of that, you get to use Django and Bootstrap. So you get to create a blog. All these things are, honestly, so worth it, because you get to learn every single basic of Python, and then you can build the apps following the videos. Right. Anyways, enough about Python. What I was going to do actually was just go through some questions that are on other videos that people might not be aware of. If they've already watched a video, you're not really going to go back, are you? So what I will do is, so I can't pronounce his name, but on the AWS video, I got a question asking, is learning Linux basics? Is it like basic? Is learning Linux basics compulsory? So I'd say yes, for sure, because I use a Mac, and even if you're not using Mac and using Windows, you need to know how to navigate the system through the terminal. That's literally what Linux is. You're just navigating the system using the terminal, using the command line. So let's say you wanted to create a folder on your desktop. Usually you'll literally right click on your desktop and create a folder. Or if you're using Mac, you open Finder and then go to the desktop. Or Windows, you'll open File Explorer and then go to the desktop and create a folder. How much quicker would it be if you kind of like automated that? Not automated, but just navigated to it. So it'll be simple. Open up Command Prompt, CD desktop, and then mkdir, which is you want to make a folder in that directory. So the directory is the desktop, and then you want to make a folder. That's like really simple way of navigating the operating system, and it's useful 100%. Of almost every day I've had to go into I've had to use Linux because I've needed to navigate the operating system of a virtual machine. Now, if you're, let's say you've deployed your virtual machine on AWS, or you've deployed it or Azure, you don't get to remote in. Like if you're on, for example, Windows, you can launch remote desktop. If you launch a remote desktop and you put in the IP address or the server address or whatever the address is, you connect to the actual device and you're connected. When you are connected to virtual machines, all you literally see is the terminal. You don't see the GUI, you don't see the start menu, you don't see any of the desktop or anything. All you see is the terminal. So if you've deployed a website, for example, to a virtual machine, so the virtual machine hosts that website, if you wanted to check that all the source files, so the home page, the contact us page, all them files were actually deployed, you need to be able to know how to navigate the operating system via the terminal or the command line. So you need to know how to go CD desktop or CD X, Y, and Z, or whatever, wherever the folder is, you need to find it. You need to be able to, you can list folders. So let's say you go CD desktop, you want to see all of the folders within that desktop. You just do ls, which will list any folders within that directory. And let me just find a video quickly that I've used. Yeah, so there's a couple of videos from Free Code Camp, and I'll link them now. So the first one, I'd say, yeah, for sure. So you can follow that, and then if you need to, you can use their other course as well. So those two courses I'd recommend if you want to get into Linux, or if you just literally want to understand how to operate the terminal. If you're not using Mac, then you could also try and use. You can also, I think, really you should know. I'm not even going to recommend Windows because you need to be able to understand Linux really before, not Linux the operating system, but just understand how to navigate through the operating system on the terminal. And once you've I by no means have in-depth knowledge. I just kind of know the basics. Like, if someone told me, oh, Tish, can you check if this directory has these files, or if this even exists on the actual device? Like, let's say, for example, log4j2 issue, right? I had to check if log4j2 was already installed on one of our virtual machines at work. And I'd never really looked at before. I've never really gone into a virtual machine and looked to see how many files there were. So I had to literally got like remote onto the virtual machine, and all I can see is the terminal, and I had to use commands on the terminal to see if like log4j2 was even on that device. So that's just an example of, like, I don't know everything. I don't know it near enough as much as I need to. But if I'd maybe done like one of these courses, and I might actually do that, I would have. If you'd like me to, if you guys want me to follow that course and do a video, and then maybe I can do a review on it or something, I'll be up for that, to be honest. Right, let's just have a look at some of the questions. So, Ahmed Khan asked, what's the best website to apply for Junior DevOps Engineer Jobs? And I gave him 3. So the first one was LinkedIn, and the reason for LinkedIn is because, one, you can like just search the term Junior DevOps Engineer, and then you'll be able to see who in your country, your city, even maybe your town is recruiting based on those keywords. And also, just LinkedIn's just you can build up your connections on there. The second one I said was company websites. Now, the reason for company websites is just because it shows that you've gone on the website and had a look at their careers rather than through like job sites. So it shows you've put a bit more effort into it. The only thing that I've noticed when it comes to looking at a lot of places, like on their company website, companies seem to list DevOps sort of job duties, but they will have the job title as cloud engineer or even software reliability engineer. And I just want you to be careful, because that is not DevOps. A cloud engineer will often be doing more admin related job roles. That when you're doing DevOps, you may be doing some admin stuff, but you're going to be doing admin stuff regardless of your job title. Regardless, cloud engineer, you're going to be doing things like maintenance of like the infrastructure. You're more working with the cloud, so you're not really doing anything DevOps related. So you're probably, most likely, you're not going to be creating and building pipelines. You're not going to be coding. You're not going to be deploying infrastructure. All those job description I just list, that's what DevOps do. Instead of someone going into the Azure portal or the AWS portal and clicking on buttons, you're to create a virtual machine. You know how long it takes? It takes a long time. If you want to create a virtual machine on the portal, you got to think about the networking and IP addresses and all this stuff. You still got to think about all them stuff, but you got that's doing it manually. When you do DevOps, you're using, I don't know, not Terraform, but you could be using Terraform, you could be using Pulumi, you could be using Ansible. You're using these different one. Your company is rarely ever going to be using more than one. Maybe but very, very rare you'd use more than one type of um, service to deploy infrastructure. So you've got all of them, and you want to use that. So what you're doing is like you're leveraging whatever. So Pulumi we use at work. You can use Python, TypeScript, Golang, C Sharp. You can use those languages to write your deployment of your infrastructure. So you can say, okay, I want to create a virtual machine. I want it to have this network infrastructure, and I want it to have these IP addresses. I want it to have these VNets, all these kind of stuff. Honestly, this might all sound like jargon, but you have all that, and you then just literally you open up your terminal and you run the script, and it will just deploy that infrastructure. When I say deploy, it will create that infrastructure. So that is so much better and more efficient and quicker than going into the portal and clicking on the buttons to create. Another reason is because if you deploy a virtual machine and then, for example, and then your colleague checks that deployment and is like, okay, this is incorrect, or maybe, let's for example say you've given it an incorrect IP address, and let's say you cannot change the IP address. All you can then do is destroy that virtual machine. So you're deleting that virtual machine and all the resources that you've created. You can then use that same code you've just deployed, and then you'll be able to deploy that same virtual machine again, but you're just changing the IP address. How much more time consuming would it be if you had to recreate that infrastructure again through the command line? So that's where infrastructure as code is so important. Cubase has asked, can you give us an idea of what questions we might be asked in a typical DevOps interview? So I've already created a video on this. And other than the basics, so I'll try and think of some questions that I haven't put in that video. But let me just see. So yeah, I'd say it's so difficult because other than them questions I've put in the actual video, the other questions outside of it would just be more not technical, but more job related. So, for example, my company, they use Pulumi to deploy their infrastructure, whereas a lot of other companies use Terraform or Ansible. Now, before I even got my first interview, I never even heard of Pulumi. I never even heard of it. So I did a little research on it. So I knew what it was and how it can be used. But what I did was they asked me in the interview, oh, have you ever used Pulumi before? And I said, no. I ain't gonna lie. But I just said, no, I haven't ever used it. In fact, I never even heard of it before. And then I just said that. But I've done a bit of research and I know that you can leverage programming language. And that's what makes it different from Terraform, because Terraform uses its own language, HashiCorp, and then Ansible also uses its own language. So, yeah, there was a lot of questions in there where it might have been like similar, where I hadn't I hadn't used it. I might have heard of it, but I had no experience using it. A lot of it's like all transferable as well. Like if you can build pipelines in YAML, you'll get on really well with Terraform, because Terraform basically is YAML, kind of. But yeah. So that's like example of one question, QBs. I'm trying to think of sort of any other questions, to be honest. Honestly, if you know you're 100% going through for a junior position, then you're not like, just have your expectations a lot lower than you might be perceiving. Like if you're going for junior, you should not know, even you probably shouldn't, you should not have really any experience. And a junior position in the UK is usually you have 0 to 6 months experience in that field, and in junior DevOps. I had that, and literally all I did was I did a boot camp on Udemy, which was the Azure and Terraform. That's all I did. That's all I did. And even then, I still forgot a lot of the things that I did in the course for when I did my interview. What they liked was that I was studying in my own time. I wasn't doing like, I was just doing IT analyst job role duties at work. But I went in my own time and I was doing the course, and that was it. And I did that course through Udemy. Again, that course is in the description, which is called the Azure Kubernetes. I also did the GitLab CI/CD pipelines. The reason I did that is if you just do a quick Google YouTube search on DevOps basics, pipelines is like up there. Like pipelines, you need to know how to write pipelines. However, again, I never written any pipeline in my life other than the course and the GitLab course. And even then, it's not like on day one when I started my job, they were like, okay, write us a bunch of pipelines. It don't really work like that. Like your expectation for junior position should meet their expectation. If their expectation is still that you know Terraform, you know pipelines inside and out, you know Kubernetes, you know X, Y, Z, that is so unrealistic. And what they're gonna be doing is, if you learn all this stuff, if I guarantee you, right? Let me say something. If you learn, so if you look at my AWS video, if you learn inside and out each one of those tools, if you learn AWS basics, you learn Kubernetes for AWS, you learn infrastructure as code, so that will be Terraform for AWS, and then you, on top of learning those, you do a bit of Python, you do a bit of Linux, and the last bit, you get you AWS certification. Don't even apply for junior with all that knowledge. You want to be applying for mid to senior level entry, because right now, almost every day I have someone on LinkedIn hitting me, or Tish, we need an Azure DevOps engineer, paying 50K above, or like some of these jobs are going for 85K. Like if you have the experience, like full blown experience, because you've done you don't really need to say, okay, I've been studying Kubernetes for 6 months. You don't give them a time frame. You just say, these are the tools that I've been doing. This is my knowledge in these tools. That's all you need to say. Don't overshare unless they ask you, oh, how long you've been doing it for, which they probably won't. Or they might if you're going from mid to senior, but like that's one thing I've learned. So when I got my junior role, I didn't have really any knowledge. Like not really. All I had was the basic, like a little bit of pipeline stuff, and I didn't really understand infrastructure as code at all, really. And just a couple of things here and there. It was just more I had a desire. I wanted to make DevOps my career. Like my end goal is that I become a contractor. So, I'll be working for companies like every 6 months, and I won't be, or like my dream job is, after my current employment, my dream job would be to go to Apple. That's my dream job. And even with Apple, they do leverage some AWS, and I'm not learning AWS right now, but it's all transferable. It's all transferable. We have DevOps engineers on my team who only come from Terraform, only come from AWS. We don't use any of those. We use Pulumi and Azure. So I wouldn't worry too much about the questions they ask. I just worry about what stuff you're doing and showcase that. B asks, how long do you think it took to become proficient in Python and some of these tools? Did you learn from the Udemy course or through books? I ain't ever opened a book in my life. No. Personally, for me, if it comes to coding, I have to learn. I can only really learn visually. I did my whole computer science degree and I didn't pick up a single book. Not a single book. I read a few articles, mainly articles I read, and just Google, but I never pick up a single book in my computer science degree, and I never pick up a single book. No, I lie. I actually purchased I purchased the DevOps what's it called? DevOps let me just Google it. I can't remember DevOps book. It's nothing to do with the Phoenix Project. That's a really good book. It's a really good book if you want to understand how DevOps works in an organization, but it's got nothing to do with programming and nothing to do with becoming proficient in any tools. It's just really good overview. That's the only book I've read that's on point. The Phoenix Project. Just type it in the chat. You're reading it now. Yeah, that's the only book I can recommend. But to answer your question, how long it took me to become proficient in Python? The answer is I'm not proficient in Python. I don't know. I wouldn't say like I'm beginner, but I wouldn't say I'm proficient either. I can definitely read Python a lot better than I can write Python. The reason that being is probably because I've watched a lot of videos on Python more than I've probably retained, like in terms of muscle memory. So if you ask me, oh, Tish, go and create a calculator app in Python, I might be able to do that. Like I probably would, yeah, like I can do that. But if you're gonna ask me, oh, Tish, go and build some website using Python, HTML, all this, like I could probably even start doing that. But no matter what, I still need YouTube or Google. And one thing is, when you're in a job, the one thing you need to be good at, or you will learn over the time, is you will learn how to Google. You will learn how to Google proficiently. I didn't realize it was a thing. Like there's certain things, there's a way of how to Googling stuff. Like if a pipeline fails, I need to understand what this error is, or if sometimes I've got to the point where I'm like, pipeline will fail because it can't find a folder in the sources in the artifact. I can understand that now because I've done it quite a lot. I've like seen the error a lot, but it's just like with everything, it's all over time. I'd say I'm okay at Python. I'm not beginner and I'm not proficient. I'd say if you're proficient in Python, that means you're able to you could go and just code away in your own time kind of thing. The other tools, so at work we use Pulumi to deploy infrastructure as code. I have not been involved with that just yet because it's quite complex. So my senior colleagues are doing that at the moment. However, once they've got so basically, little backstory. So the team that I work on, they have basically built a new website because the old website was using old tools, it was outdated, and it wasn't really in the cloud. So they built a new website using Azure, virtual machines, all this, all that, Magnolia for the backend, all this kind of stuff. So they've brought in DevOps into this team to automate a lot of things. So there's one of the things is we need to recreate every single infrastructure. So virtual machines, DNS, traffic zones. We got to literally everything that you could think of to build a website, and maybe even more than what you can think of. We have to recreate all that. So my senior colleagues are doing that, and then I think I'll get involved in when it's a little bit not stable, but when at least the core infrastructure is being deployed, and then I can start deploying some other resources to fit in with that infrastructure. So for infrastructure as code, I'm not proficient. I'm still learning, and I've been employed since November 2021. Before that, I was a second line support analyst. So I was just doing IT general roles. I worked at a university in the UK. That's what I was doing. So that I'm still learning. The other tools, things like pipelines, I'd say I'm a lot better. I'm like, if I've got tasks where I need to basically build a pipeline from scratch. So, what that would do is, if you don't know what a pipeline is, essentially, let's say you've got the front end developers working on a website. So the front end developers are working on code, so the HTML, the CSS, whatever. They're working on the source code for the website to see, so that we can see what the website looks like, right? So they're working on that. You got backend developers that do a lot of, I don't know, there's some tasks that overlap with backend and DevOps, but they focus on the like the database, the CMS, so the content management system. So like we use Magnolia. They focus on all that backend stuff that we do, right? So as DevOps, we've got to build a pipeline. So let's say for example, you want to do, let's say the front end developers make a commit with their new code because they want to update, I don't know, the text on a website, right? So where the pipeline comes into it, you got your repository. In your repository, you got your source folder with all your index, your all your HTML files and all that kind of stuff. You got your source file in there. In the root of that repository, you got a YAML file, which is what the pipeline is. The pipeline, you can define really what you want to automate. So, for example, let's say the front-end development makes a change, they commit that change, we can specify in the pipeline that when the repository has been updated or a commit has happened to a specific branch, let's call it develop branch, you can say in the pipeline, run the pipeline. The pipeline will be defined into different jobs, tasks, whatever. If the website needs, for example, npm Flask Django installed, you would define in the pipeline that when it's gonna deploy those resources, the website to a virtual machine, so you can see the website, you will be able to you'll be able to specify in the pipeline, okay, we want to automate all of that. So the click of a button when someone makes a commit, we're going to run the pipeline, we're going to deploy all of that stuff to their website, so to the virtual machine. And then that's like kind of like a really basic overview, but it's a bit more complicated than that. But I don't know. But anyways, pipelines, I feel like I'm really confident in that now. And I really wasn't before. Yeah, so okay, so Alex has asked, you mentioned properly Googling things is very important in IT. Can you give an example of how do you Google certain errors and issues? Okay, so let's say you get an error code and it's error 101. This file path, let's call it desktop / TechyTish, blah, 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 text file. Let's call that the file path. So it's say error 101, this file path could not be found. Personally, you kind of want to just copy. I feel like most people's gut is like straight away, okay, I'll copy the whole error code and paste it into Google. You could do that. But what you'll find in a lot of DevOps, like in a lot of DevOps errors, is it's always very specific to your source files or your code. No one else is going to have Googled that, because unless they're in your company, and it's happened before, but that's very unlikely. So what I usually do is anything with a file path or like anything specific, like I would copy and paste the error, the whole error, but I would just put quotations with nothing in between, or I'd replace the quotations with ... So I would Google error 101, file ... could not be found. And then because we use Azure and because we use Azure pipelines, I would type Azure at the end, or Azure DevOps, or Azure pipelines, or even just YAML at the end. And that's like an example of how you would, like, you Google something, you want to just include the keywords of the platform that you're using, so whatever cloud provider you're using. If you didn't put Azure, or you didn't put YAML, or you even didn't put pipeline, it could bring back some results, but it'd just be less specific, and you might just need to refine it a bit more. So that's like a good way of Googling, Alex. And B is asked, so DevOps is all about automation and making test environments. Kind of. It's like, it blows my mind, because I know for a fact that if I worked at a different organization, DevOps would be completely different. So it's different depending on where you work. The type of task you'll do is different. So I know that, I don't know if you'd be up for it, but one of my colleagues is leaving, and he is going to he's going to be working for BT. He previously worked there, and they've asked him to come back, so he's going to be going to work for BT. And I'm thinking of doing another live stream, but where we get him in and I do an interview with him. So his experience is that he's got a computer science degree, but he's been doing DevOps a lot longer than me. He's been doing DevOps for about 5 years. Or I could even get one of my current colleagues in. I could ask them if they want to hop in on a live with me, and we could do a Q&A with them. One of my other colleagues, he's been doing DevOps over 5 years. He's not got a degree. I don't even think he's got A levels, or college, whatever. He's worked his way from normal IT jobs, or support job roles, all the way up to DevOps. So and he's so intelligent, like he knows his shit. So um I think I'll do that. Like I'll I've not told work that I have this YouTube channel, so I've not told anyone at work. So I've been trying to leave it off until maybe I hit like 500 subscribers, but I don't think that's going to happen until maybe the end of the year. So I think it'd be good for everyone to maybe have, if I interview one of my colleagues who has been working in the field for over 5 years, and they have a lot more experience than me, and they know what they're talking about. And then you guys can ask questions as well in the chat. I'll try and arrange something for that. Um, so with what B said about DevOps being all about automation and making test environments, it is a lot of it is about automation. Like, for example, you're not always going to be working on your tickets. For example, someone from, I don't know, let's just say a front end developer could message you and say, "Oh, Tish, I've been doing this task over and over." Like, maybe they're, for example, maybe they when they're testing the website locally, for example, they might need a specific thing installed or a package installed, and they might have to keep having to install it. We could probably deploy something for them or create something so that when they test it locally, it installs that package. And those are the kind of little things that um I like that could happen. But I'm not too sure. I don't know what type of video you want from me next, but I've got a long list of videos that I want to create. I was thinking of doing maybe either a day in the life while I'm working at home. I don't think I'll do a day in the life in the actual office because I don't want people really knowing where I work, and also um, I don't even think I'd be allowed to film in the building. So because we have a, it's small, like one of the top five leading like health companies in the UK. So like I don't want to like things could be bad for competition basically. Um and then so what I was gonna do was I was gonna film like either a day in the life working from home, or like just talking about what my job do is what I sort of do. I think a day in the life I think a day in the life working from home would be good because every day is sort of different, and I won't really have to plan it as much. Whereas if I do a sit down video talking about my job duties, I would really have to think about what stuff I'm doing. I mean, I know what stuff I kind of do day to day, but this type of stuff that I'm actually doing always changes. Or if I work on a ticket, I might get that ticket done in a couple of days, or and then it's on to the next thing. Or something might, like an environment might have broken, and then I have to fix it. Like I have to find out why is this environment not working. So there's that kind of thing. What what do you mean by security risk, B? I'm not sure what you mean by that. um I'm gonna just have a look at some other questions that were asked. I do know that this is running over an hour, but we'll see what happens. So um just gonna see how long. Oh, okay. So yeah, I'll answer your question. Do I um do you incorporate any security practices within um the pipelines at your job? Yes. So we've actually that's part of one of our path to production. So we've got like this whole path where we know as DevOps what all of the product teams are going to be, what tools we're using, so that we get from source code all the way to production environment. So it's gone through all the testing, all the different type of things, but the pipelines themselves, we've got to implement security not really DevOps tools, but just security. So for example, a really popular one is called Sneak, and essentially Sneak will just test against your repository against vulnerabilities, and it'll give you a report on whether there's any vulnerabilities. So let's say let's say, for example, in your pipeline, you specify that you're using Ubuntu, and then you specify the version of Ubuntu. When you run the pipeline, and if it's got the Sneak task in it, it can test to see whether maybe that version of Ubuntu is vulnerable or not, and it will give you the result. So that's sort of ways we implement security into DevOps. So I hope that sort of answers that question. There are other things, but I'm probably either unaware of, or I've just not been exposed to that as of right now. But there is a couple of tasks that I've got to do for work where I need to implement like security or monitoring tools into our product, so that whenever pipelines are run, we have that continuous results and stuff. So B said, are you actually allowed to film what you're working on? I mean, I don't think the company will like that. See, like I think I would agree. Like, I've held off for so long. I would have done it by now, because I know in my contract I can't discuss what I'm working on. So I feel like the only thing I probably could do is I won't necessarily do a day in the life, but I could basically talk about some of my job duties, and but not go into specifics. So for example, if I'm doing a pipeline, I won't show what the pipeline is, or I'll just say like, this is regarding pipelines, this is what my job duty involves in me maintaining, creating pipelines, that kind of thing. So I think I'll do like I'll do like a junior DevOps engineer job duties. I'll do like a video on that until like I get into maybe like a really big company where they might not care as much, or when it's just not plain like in my contract, like I can't discuss really what I'm doing at work. So yeah, I'll do something like that. QB says, I'm really interested in DevSecOps, and B says, I'd be interested to hear more about that. I assume he might mean the security element, or she. I mean, I feel like it's like a lot, like all of it is a lot, and you kind of just, I don't know, it's almost like you never stop learning, and it's one thing after the other kind of thing. So I really wouldn't like, I can't say that I'm DevSecOps. I cannot say that. I cannot claim that title. A couple of my colleagues, they are DevSecOps engineers though. So someone asked, how long did you self-study for to get into the position that you're in now? So, like I said before, I'm gonna do like a video of literally my journey. Um, so there's like um sorry, I've just lost my train of thought, but um so I'm gonna do a video where I'm literally talking about like my transition from IT support to DevOps, because even though it's still even though it's technology, it's completely different fields and it's completely different mindset. You don't have that support thinking cap on really. You need to have the DevOps hat, which is different. But I'm gonna do a video on talking about my experience in IT support. That's what I've been doing really for the past 4 to 5 years before DevOps. My first ever job, I was a McDonald's crew member. I might throw that in there. But yeah, so I'm gonna do a video on that. And so I started my employment in November 2021. About 8 months before, no, about 12 months, no, about 8 months before I got the job. I had an interview with a company for Junior DevOps Engineer role, and I didn't get the job. And the feedback was that I needed, like, the person who did get the job, they had just done a boot camp on DevOps, and they gave me some feedback, and I connected with the hiring manager, like the DevOps team lead for that company on LinkedIn. And I messaged him saying, thanks for the interview. What like more in can I have more in-depth feedback on what things I should be doing? And he gave me like loads of tools and stuff to pick up on. So he said he guaranteed me in 6 months' time I'd be ready to get a job. And that's what I did. I just basically did a DevOps boot camp, and then I didn't even apply to this job that I got. Like the the recruiter reached out to me and said, "Hey Tish, we like the look of your CV. We like what you're doing and stuff. So hit us up." So that's basically that. Um, and I'd I'd say on and off, like like every other day, I was doing something DevOps related. I was just literally following a Udemy course, and that's in the description below, and that's the Kubernetes one, the Azure Kubernetes. If you want to follow AWS, you can check out my other video about AWS. Alex asked, is there actually such a thing as junior DevOps? Because I heard everyone is working on the same tickets, and in real there is no big difference. Okay, so I feel like I understand what you're saying. You're asking, does junior DevOps job role actually exist? Because at the end of the day, I'm working in the same team as senior DevOps and even just normal DevOps engineers. If we're talking about hierarchy, yes, I would say there is a definite differentiation between the job roles. Be not so much, not so much what I'm working on, but more the complexity of what I'm working on. So, like for example, the guys might be my colleagues. They might be like, I don't know, because like I feel like not I don't know. I feel like some of the stuff that I do, like all of everything that I do, they can obviously do, but a lot of the stuff that I do is one, so that I understand how the product works, like how the website, all the way from all the tools and technologies, like all the architect, I need to understand all of the little things of the architect and the DevOps part of that. And the only way I can do that is if I create an infrastructure from scratch. So, for example, I've literally created environments from scratch, and I now understand how the website is deployed. I understand how it's all connected. So, and that threw me in the deep end a little bit. Pipelines, I at first, so I was creating pipelines, but it was more copy and paste. So I was copy and pasting existing pipelines, or I was, and then once I understand like really how like all the different tasks and how a pipeline actually works, then it became that I was picking up tickets, or I was being assigned tickets that were like, okay, so I need to actually create a pipeline from scratch. This pipeline might not exist anywhere else in the business, but what I can do is I can start like coding. I could start writing this pipeline and just looking at for reference from other pipelines in the company, because we have like a lot of templates as well. So we use parameters. So instead of having to type things out the same time all the time, or defining environments all the time, we can just look to the base template, extend from that, and just call to define or call from the parameters. So I'd say I'd say basically there is a clear distinction between who is junior, who is mid, and who is senior, but the job duties are the same. So if, for example, when I'm at work and someone says, "Oh, okay, an environment's down, I can't access it, or I'm getting this error," just because I'm junior, I it doesn't mean someone more senior will look at that. So I'll look at that, and 100% I have no idea what the hell. I don't know. So most of the time I don't even know why it's down. So I have to figure that out through Google or whatever, or I just check the environments or whatever. If then it's like I'm taking too long or whatever, I'll just ask for help from my senior colleagues. Um, but again, this might differ if I was at a different company. Like there could be a company where only mid and seniors look at errors from environments. Juniors might not do that. But because it's me and my colleague, and then my other colleagues just joined. There's three of us. We work on a product team full of front end, back end, architects, um, business analysts, QA team, so quality assurance. We work all as one product team, and me and my two colleagues, we're the only DevOps engineers for that team. So I work technically only in a three-man team. So I have like a lot of stuff that I'll be doing. So I think another question to follow up your question, Alex, is I think it depends on the size of the team and how they define what people are doing. And I think if you show like my colleagues ask me, okay, Tish, what do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus on pipelines? Do you want to focus on infrastructure as code? Do you want to focus on this, that, or the other? And I said I want to focus on pipelines, because once you have pipelines down, that's it. It's a game changer. It's like a light bulb goes off, and then you can move on to the next thing. So this is like my sort of roadmap at work. I'm doing different things day to day, but right now my focus is a lot of my stuff is pipeline work, or just like tools and stuff like that. Like a lot of my stuff pipeline work. So I guess it really depends on the team and the company. But um I I if my colleague, because I'm junior, if my senior goes, okay, Tish, we want you to look at this ticket and it's one of their tickets, then I will look at their tickets. But most of the time I'll know what they're working on, but I just I might not be involved in that specific task. So it kind of like just depends. Hope that sort of answers your question, Alex. So B says I'm in IT support right now. Yeah, that's good for you. If you can sort of get out when you can. So I was in IT support for about I don't know, 4 to 5 years, and I was in maybe 2 to 3 years longer than I should have been, and I moved jobs every 12 months. And the reason I moved jobs was I was bored, wasn't paid enough, and I wanted to challenge myself. I went through a whole, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Years ago, I wanted to be a network engineer. So I started focusing on CCNA and network stuff, and I bought all of the syllabus, and I was doing all these things, and I was really into networks to the point where, like, I wanted to be a network engineer. So then what happened was I started studying the CCNA, and I was bored. I was like, I cannot be doing this as a job. Like, I cannot be doing these type of things. And I really miss Python programming. There is a bit of Python automating or whatever in networking, but it's not the same. So I also wanted something that like would challenge me, and something that was unique as well. And like DevOps right now is the sweet spot. Like you can hire front end, back end, software. Um, you can hire what else? You can hire network engineers. But right now, people can't hire DevOps engineers because they don't have. There's not enough DevOps engineers. There's too much demand. Like COVID sped up the cloud life cycle by 5 to 10 years. What I mean by that is essentially, if COVID never happened, all the companies would be migrating to the cloud within 5 to 10 years. But because COVID happened, it all happened within like a year or whatever. So a lot of companies were like, okay, we're going to invest in the cloud. We're going to bin all that physical infrastructure sitting in a server room somewhere. We're going to host all of our stuff in the cloud on virtual machines and all that kind of stuff. So, but in order to do all that, in order to do migration, in order to do all of that stuff, you gotta have a DevOps person. You gotta have someone that sort of knows what they're doing. So, and that's another aspect. Like for me, I'm gonna do another video as well on my certification roadmap. So I'm doing a certification roadmap to gain Azure DevOps Engineer Expert for Microsoft, and essentially they like I'm doing my fundamentals right now. I should be sitting my exam in the next 3 months, and then I'm gonna be doing, I think, the admin, the solutions architect, and then the DevOps engineer, and then the DevOps expert. Just so that the solutions architect's quite interesting because it will gain more insight into how architect of software and solutions work. So that you don't have to do that, but yeah, I'll do another video on that. So yeah, being if you can do some DevOps tool, like follow some videos, tutorials, get your knowledge up, and get out of IT support, because unless you want to go into team leader or management, me personally, IT support is done and dusted. It's a bit dead. We need the support. You need IT support engineers and stuff, but you're never gonna get into the realms of. You're never gonna get into the realms of like, you know, technical. What it's like to be an engineer. There's a lot of luxury when it comes to being an engineer. As well. Like I get to I work within a smaller team. I kind of get to choose my hours as well. Like I can choose between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. Sorry, no. I can choose between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. So I usually do 8 till 4, but sometimes I might do 9 till 5, depending on meetings and stuff like that. So, there's that flexibility there. And I'm hybrid. So I work 2 days in the office and 3 days from home. And it's perfect balance, in my opinion. But I wouldn't mind working like maybe one day in the office a week or a month. Who knows? But at the beginning, you want to be in the office as much as you can so you can get to bond with your colleagues and stuff like that. Do you have to be in help desk before getting into DevOps? How do you have to be in help desk to get into DevOps? No, I wouldn't say. It depends on your background. If you don't have a degree, actually, scratch that. I don't even want to call in the degree thing because personally, I don't believe you need a degree to get into DevOps. But I'd say if you are in a completely different sector, let's just, for example, say you was in catering and you wanted to get into DevOps. Maybe you know someone that is a DevOps engineer. I don't know. Let's say you're in a completely different sector that's outside of IT, technology, all of that. I'd recommend you just literally follow one of my videos. So the AWS style video, I've got 2 more videos coming out, one for Azure and one for Google Cloud Platform, so that people can follow those different paths depending on which cloud provider they want to sort of go in the realms with. And essentially, as long as, like I said before, as long as you've got your experience in a cloud provider, infrastructure as code, Kubernetes, just because Kubernetes, containerization, Docker, that is the it right now as well. As long as you've got them 3 things, so a cloud provider, infrastructure as code, and Kubernetes or slash containerization, but Kubernetes. And don't underestimate, Kubernetes is difficult. Infrastructure as code can be somewhat difficult if you've never done programming or anything. But as long as you've got them 3, and let's say you do like AWS cloud practitioner, which is the fundament, which is like basically the entry tier exam for AWS. It don't matter if you got catering as your last job, as long as you got right at the top relevant work experience, DevOps, part-time, at home, whatever. List the projects, list the stuff that you've been working on. That's it. You don't need to be working in DevOps to say you are DevOps engineer. You just need to be showcasing that you are specifically looking at cloud and DevOps tools. And that's it. I'm doing another video as well, doing a lot of videos on my exact CV that landed me the job. So I'm gonna do that. So I'll show you what it looks like to have have not had a DevOps engineer job role, but have that on your CV. I'll show you that. I'd say, so to answer the question, QBs, do you have to have a help desk job before getting into DevOps? I'd say no. However, it doesn't hurt because whatever, a lot of the softer skills are transferable. And one thing with DevOps, collaboration. You need to be able to interact and speak to so many different people. Like, remember I said, I'm speaking to product owners, so business analysts, quality assurance testers, the rest of my DevOps team, my manager, stakeholders. Like, we are speaking to these people, if not at least once a week, mainly daily. And all of those people have different technical backgrounds. And some of them don't even understand what DevOps is. Some of them don't understand. So we have those different things there. And you need to be able to navigate your way through and that kind of thing. Is there actually a thing like no, sorry, I've already answered that. So yeah, it's a really good time to get into DevOps. Cube is a really good time. And Alex asked, how many hours I work a week? Is there a time for life also in DevOps? Yes. So this is a good question. At my company, and I think in a lot of places, DevOps, compared to like software developers and compared to, I'm trying to think of another, maybe front end developers, but even there. But in my specific company, we have a really good work life balance. They don't want you stopping behind, really, unless you have to, like, unless there's mandatory for something to be done, I'm not really stopping behind kind of thing. And they want you to have that balance, they want you to have that time away so you can regroup and refresh for the next day or the next week or whatever. But I work so 7.5 hours a day. So either between 8 and 4 or 9 and 5. Those are the hours that I chose because they suit my lifestyle. And we have half an hour lunch. So that's why it's 7.5 hours a day. And yeah, so with our team, we don't have on-call. So yeah, there's that. We don't have on-call, so we don't have like, oh, something's down, can DevOps look at it? We don't have that. Maybe that could happen in the future because our product is in beta right now. So the original website is still live, and we're just creating we're creating the new website, and that's in beta, so it's only out for certain people to like log in and have a look and test and stuff like that. So there's that. Are you working with EC2 instances, or all your infrastructure is on Kubernetes? So we do not use AWS. We use Azure. So EC2 is specific for AWS Kubernetes. The equivalent in Azure would be AKS, which is Azure Kubernetes Service. And the product team that I work on, we do not use Kubernetes. However, there's another product team within the organization with a different website. All of their infrastructure has been created using Pulumi, and then it has been deployed and containerized in Kubernetes on Azure. So one thing I had to learn was you've got to separate infrastructure as code and Kubernetes. They're completely different things. Infrastructure as code is just you writing out code to create a piece of infrastructure and its resources. Kubernetes is containerization of that infrastructure. It's completely separate. And it took me a while to separate the two. I always thought they were together, but they're not. You can have infrastructure as code and deploy your infrastructure, but you don't have to have Kubernetes. You don't even have to have containerization. It's just a better way of scalability and having backups and stuff like that. So that's the difference. Which do I prefer, AWS or Azure? I was studying AWS for a bit for that first job interview that I had, which I didn't get. And then one of the advice I had from the hiring manager for that job I didn't get, he said, pick a cloud provider that is used at your current employment and try and pick up some DevOps tasks in your current job role. So when I was at the university, they used Azure, and I was learning Azure because I had the idea of, okay, I'm going to start maybe working with the third line team to see what DevOps tasks they sort of do. And before I could even do that, I got this job. So Yeah, there was that. So I think the I don't work with AWS now, and if I had to say for preference, it's neither. They're literally both the same. It's like it's like I don't know. Like I'm trying to think. It's almost like you've got two of the same things, but they're just called different things because of that's how Amazon's called it and that's how Microsoft's called it, which is why I was saying if you know how to do pipelines and you know how to deploy infrastructure as code. So let's say you know how to create a virtual machine in Azure, you'll know, and someone said, okay, I need you to create a virtual machine in AWS. It's the same bloody thing. It's just different. It's just a different name. I don't even know. I don't even. It's like, for example, if I type in Google now, EC2 equivalent Azure. Even Microsoft has a white paper on the comparisons. So for example, you can create a like honestly, they're literally identical. It's just different names. So me, I'm on that Azure path. So I'm not gonna differentiate unless I maybe get an Apple job. Like let's say in 5-6 years time, or however long it takes to get me that dream job at Apple, and they say, okay, Tish, we want you to ditch the Microsoft and come onto AWS, then I would do it there. But from right now, it's way too much for me to be doing Microsoft and AWS. I don't need to do AWS. It has no relevance to my job role. Um, I could do it in my own time, but I've got other stuff that I want to be doing in my own time, like the Python and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I say to you, pick one and then run with it. Go on the basis of the companies around you or the companies that are in the vicinity, or do a quick Google search or LinkedIn search. Just Google DevOps engineer and then put in your city or your town and then see what companies are using in what platform they're using in their I'd say it's been pretty split in the area I work in. However, if you're looking for 100% remote jobs, it doesn't really matter because it's remote. So you could even specify the location as remote and see what comes up. A lot of them are AWS, but also there is a lot that do Microsoft, and there's also a lot that do both. And there's some that don't even specify. Like for example, Apple, I know they use AWS, but on the job description, it doesn't specify like, oh, you need to be proficient in AWS. Instead, their job description's like, we want you to understand DevOps. We want you to understand pipelines and CI/CD. So this is where the tooling is okay, but understanding the methodology that DevOps practices, doing the actual job duties and stuff, that's where it's more important than an actual specific platform, because regardless, you are going to be picking up new stuff, and a lot of the stuff is transferable. Like if I have no idea, if I'd never heard of EC2 and I got a job in Apple and they're like, okay, Tish, you need to know your AWS stuff, I can just Google like what was the equivalent, or like what is EC2 in Azure, and then I'll be able to be like, oh, or when I've logged into AWS, I'll be able to understand what it is. So I'm pretty sure the EC2, well, the EKS, which is I think it's Elastic. Is it Elastic Kubernetes Service? something like that. And then there's AKS, which is Azure Kubernetes Service. It doesn't really matter between the two. And I'm wondering if EC2 is to do with the virtual machines. I'm not too sure, because some of our infrastructure is in virtual machines, and some of our infrastructure is in like some of it has been like deployed using Kubernetes or contained using Kubernetes. But I haven't been working on Kubernetes right now because it's really complex. But I do realize that this live has gone on a lot longer, containerization. So I have no idea what EC2 is. The only thing I can compare it to in Azure is, I don't even know. I have no idea. I can't really answer that. Sorry. I was just, it's kind of annoying me. I want to know though. Yeah, I was right. EC2 is, I don't even know how I guessed that, but EC2, the equivalent is virtual machines. So in Azure, they're just called, I guess, Azure virtual machines. So to answer your question is, um, depending on the product team in our organization, some infrastructure is in virtual machines and some is in Kubernetes. Okay. Yeah. So a few more questions have come in. B asked, when doing these Udemy courses, did it get expensive testing with Azure environment? For example, Udemy course. Very good question. And I made the mistake. I did the course, or I don't even know if I finished it, but in the course, at the time you're doing the course, it won't cost you more than $10, or in UK in pounds, that's, I don't know, it's probably like £7. However, the course goes through you deploying infrastructure and destroying infrastructure. But the problem is when you're doing the course, if you destroy your infrastructure, you have no live website. So sort of forgot that I even had the infrastructure in Azure. And when I got a bill from Microsoft saying I owe them 40 quid, I was like, I'm not paying that. I'm not even using it. I hadn't even used it for like a few months. So what was happening was all the computer services that I'd set up during the Udemy course was that it had been running, the virtual machine, that whatever, this, that, and the other had been running. So that means it's using up the compute hours, and then you take you through the threshold. So I contacted Microsoft and said, I'm not paying this. And they gave me a refund. So to answer your question specifically, it will get expensive if you don't destroy your resources. So when you're doing the course, follow what they're doing, but do it and commit to it. Don't do it, don't start it and then come back to it in 3 months, because I guarantee you your resources, if they've not been destroyed, will start costing you a lot of money. So follow the courses. They won't cost you more than a bomb. $10, £10, whatever. They won't cost you more than that. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. That's another reason actually why I picked the Udemy courses rather than some of the just other courses, because some people don't specify how much all of these resources you're creating to follow this tutorial will actually cost you. Unless they specify that you're going to be destroying the resources, then that's it. What is the predicted view of DevOps for upcoming 5 years? This was asked by Srinivas. I hope I've pronounced your name right. And that's a really good question. I definitely believe that DevOps is only going to grow. It's, if anything, you're going to have every company, I guarantee you, every company in 5 years' time that's in tech, that has cloud services, uses cloud services, they're going to want a dedicated DevOps engineer in the infrastructure team or in the whatever team. And I believe that everything's always changing. For example, Kubernetes is really big right now and has been for the past few years, right? But Azure is actually creating their own, I want to say it's a platform as a service. I think it's a PaaS. They're creating their own, basically it's identical to Kubernetes, but it's just going to be Microsoft. So you've got all of these things, like there'll be someone will create something, like whoever created Kubernetes, right, created it like what, 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many years ago, and it's really it right now and has been over the pandemic. There has been for a few years, but Microsoft's creating one. So that only leads me to believe Amazon going to be creating their own, and then Google's going to be creating their own. So all these things are evolving all the time, and there's always going to be the need for automation. There's always going to be the need for basically making continuous integration and development continuous. So getting integrated services into production, testing, and then all the way back. So from front end engineers, back end engineers making a change all the way to production. How do we get through that? And that's what CI/CD is basically. Is like what tools we're using to make this thing from on someone's local machine all the way into production. Anyways, I hope that's answered you guys' questions. It's Sunday and I've got work tomorrow. I've had the week off, and that's why I've not had a video out this week, because I've just been focusing on some personal stuff. But I'm really looking forward to when I can finally get 500 subs, because then I get the community tab and I can engage with you guys a lot more. But I don't know if you want me to do, I think I'm going to do a live every couple of weeks so that we can get through more questions or just talk about other things. But I hope you guys have a good day. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.